The explosion rocked the scrapyard, sending a shower of sparks and metal fragments into the air. Hank Carter dropped his welding torch and shielded his eyes as the old freighter's engine compartment burst into flames. Cursing under his breath, the 63-year-old mechanic scrambled to his feet and reached for the fire suppressant system. His weathered hands, marked with the scars of 47 years working with spacecraft, moved with practiced efficiency despite the tremors of age. "Damn military surplus garbage," he muttered, activating the suppressant foam. The white substance quickly enveloped the flames, smothering them into submission. Hank wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of grease across his already dirty face. His salt and pepper beard was singed at the edges. The Sol System salvage station orbiting Jupiter was Hank's home and business for the past 20 years. After retiring from the Earth Defense Fleet, he'd purchased this outpost with his pension, preferring the solitude of deep space to the crowded retirement communities on Earth or Mars. Here among the derelict ships and scrap metal, Hank found peace in giving new life to abandoned vessels. As the foam dissipated, Hank approached the damaged freighter to assess the situation. That's when he heard it, a faint, high-pitched sound, almost like a whimper. Frowning, he leaned closer to the scorched engine compartment, wondering if the heat had damaged some resonating component. The sound came again, definitely organic, not mechanical. Puzzled, Hank carefully removed a section of the melted bulkhead. Behind it was a small, concealed compartment, a smuggler's hold, he realized. And inside, curled in a protective ball, was the strangest creature he had ever seen. It resembled a reptile, no larger than a house cat, with iridescent scales that shifted color in the dim light. Two tiny wings, mere nubs really, protruded from its back. Its eyes, large and intelligent, were a brilliant gold with vertical pupils that dilated in fear as it looked up at Hank. "Well, I'll be damned," Hank whispered. "What are you doing here, little fella?" The creature made that whimpering sound again, and Hank noticed a wound on its side, possibly from the explosion. Without hesitation, he removed his work shirt and gently wrapped the creature, mindful of its injured side. "Don't you worry," he said softly. "Old Hank's got you now." Back in his living quarters, Hank carefully cleaned the creature's wound. It was surprisingly docile, watching him with those intelligent eyes. He'd seen many alien species during his military service, but nothing like this. The wound wasn't deep, and the creature seemed to relax as he applied a medical sealant. "You need a name," Hank said, offering a small piece of synthetic protein. The creature sniffed it cautiously before snatching it with surprising speed. "How about Ember? Seems fitting, considering how we met." Ember made a chirping sound that Hank interpreted as approval. Over the next few days, the creature's wound healed with remarkable speed. Hank was surprised at how quickly he became attached to his new companion. There was something about those eyes, so full of intelligence and curiosity. 2 weeks after finding Ember, Hank was awakened by an urgent alert from his station's proximity sensors. A vessel was approaching, not unusual in itself, as clients often visited the salvage yard. But this ship was unlike any he'd seen before. Its hull was sleek and black, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it difficult to estimate its true size. Ember, who now slept at the foot of Hank's bed, was suddenly alert, making a sound Hank had never heard before, a low, resonant hum that made the hair on his arms stand on end. "You know something about this, don't you?" Hank asked, reaching for his old service pistol. The creature's reaction put him on edge. The communication system crackled to life. "Salvage station operator, this is Captain Vex of the Draconid Imperial Guard. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." Hank's military instincts kicked in. The voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable threat. He'd never heard of the Draconid Imperial Guard, but the way Ember reacted told him this wasn't a friendly visit. "This is a registered Sol System business," Hank replied, keeping his voice steady. "State your purpose or clear my space." There was a pause before the voice responded, now with a hint of irritation. "We are tracking stolen property of the highest importance to the Draconid Empire. Compliance is mandatory." Ember had moved to hide behind Hank's legs, trembling slightly. In that moment, looking down at the frightened creature, Hank made his decision. "I need to verify your authorization with Earth Central Command." He stalled, already moving toward the emergency evacuation pod. It wasn't much, Just a small craft designed to reach Jupiter's moon Europa in case of a station failure. But it was his only option. That will not be necessary, the voice replied coldly. We are boarding now. Hank scooped up Ember and a small bag of emergency supplies. Sorry, not today, he muttered, sealing the evacuation pod and initiating the launch sequence. The small craft detached from the station with a jolt that nearly threw Hank against the bulkhead. Through the view screen, he caught sight of the alien vessel. It was massive, at least 10 times larger than he initially estimated, its dark hull bristling with what could only be weapon systems. As his pod accelerated away, energy signatures lit up along the ship's side. They were powering weapons. Hold tight, Ember, Hank said grimly, pushing the pod's engines beyond safety limits. The creature curled against his chest, that strange humming sound growing louder. The first shot passed just over them, a warning. The second wouldn't miss. Hank's mind raced through his options, all of them poor. The pod had no weapons, minimal shielding, and wasn't built for evasive maneuvers. Suddenly, Ember's humming reached a crescendo. The creature's body began to glow with an internal light, and before Hank's astonished eyes, a shimmering field of energy surrounded the pod. The next blast from the pursuing ship hit this field and dissipated harmlessly. What in the hell? Hank whispered, staring at Ember. The creature's eyes met his, and somehow, Hank understood. This was no ordinary alien pet. This was something far more significant. Taking advantage of the unexpected protection, Hank pushed the pod's engines further, making for the dense debris field surrounding an abandoned mining operation. If he could reach it, he might lose their pursuers in the chaos of metal and rock. As they entered the debris field, Ember's protective field continued to deflect smaller pieces of scrap. Hank navigated with the skill of a veteran pilot, weaving through the obstacle course while constantly checking the scanner for their pursuers. The massive ship couldn't follow them into the tightly packed debris, but Hank knew they wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, the scanner soon picked up smaller craft launching from the mothership, pursuit vessels designed for exactly this kind of chase. They really want you bad, don't they? Hank said to Ember, who had maintained the protective field despite visible signs of exhaustion. What exactly are you? As if in response, the creature's eyes began to glow, and Hank felt a strange pressure in his mind. Then, astonishingly, he heard a voice, not with his ears, but directly in his thoughts. Guardian, came the word, clear as day. You are now my guardian. Hank nearly lost control of the pod. You can speak? In my head. Forming bond. The voice continued, strained but determined. Need safe place. Then explain. Right, Hank said, focusing back on piloting. Safe place first, existential crisis later. He spotted an opening in the debris field, a partially intact research station abandoned during the resource wars decades ago. It wasn't ideal, but it would provide temporary shelter and might confuse their pursuer sensors. Guiding the pod into a docking bay that still held atmosphere, Hank powered down all but the essential systems. Ember's protective field faded, and the creature slumped in exhaustion. Hey, you okay? Hank asked, genuine concern in his voice as he gently stroked Ember's scales. The creature's eyes flickered. Drained. Need rest. But safe now. Temporarily. Hank set up a makeshift camp in what appeared to be an old mess hall. As Ember slept, curled tightly against his side, Hank kept watch, his service pistol ready. Questions burned in his mind, but he let the creature rest. Hours later, Ember stirred. The creature seemed stronger, its scales more vibrant. It looked up at Hank with those golden eyes. You have questions, the voice said in his mind. About 1 million, Hank replied. Let's start with what you are and why those folks want you so badly. I am Draconid, what humans might call dragon. Young one, not fully grown. Hank raised an eyebrow. Dragon? Like from Earth myths. Your ancestors encountered my kind. Long ago, memory became myth. And those people chasing us. My captors. Draconid Empire. They stole me from Nest. For my abilities. Hank's eyes narrowed. They were smuggling you. Yes. To sell. I am Royal Clutch. Rare abilities even among my kind. The pieces started to fall into place for Hank. So when I found you, you saved me. Began bond. Now you are guardian. What does that mean exactly, being your guardian? Ember shifted, wings stretching slightly. Sacred bond. Gives you access to my abilities. Gives me protection while vulnerable. Until fully grown. And how long is that going to take? Many of your years. 10, perhaps. Hank let out a long whistle. Well, that complicates things. Those Imperial fellas aren't going to just let this go, are they? No. Very valuable. They will hunt. Hank ran a hand through his thinning hair. So we're fugitives now. Great. My retirement plan didn't exactly include being chased across space by an alien empire. Ember made a sound that Hank realized was a laugh. You are good, Guardian. Strong. Smart. We will survive. I'm also old, Hank pointed out. 63 isn't exactly prime age for going on the run. Age means nothing. Bond gives strength. Already healing you. Hank frowned, then realized the arthritis pain in his hands, a constant companion for years, was indeed gone. He flexed his fingers in wonder. Well, I'll be damned, he said softly. That's some trick. Not trick. Bond. Ember's mental voice grew serious. But danger comes. Must move soon. As if on cue, the station's structure vibrated. Someone was docking. Time to go, Hank said, quickly gathering their few supplies. Any ideas? Need better ship. This small pod not enough. Hank thought quickly. There's a maintenance bay 2 levels down. Might have something more substantial. They moved swiftly through the abandoned station, Hank's old military training serving him well as they avoided direct corridors and used maintenance shafts instead. Ember rode on his shoulder, occasionally providing directions through their mental link. The maintenance bay was a treasure trove, a Horizon-class courier vessel, compact but well-equipped with a faster-than-light drive. It was dusty from disuse but appeared intact. Can you fly this? Ember asked as Hank examined the ship. I can fly anything, Hank replied with a confidence born of decades of experience. The question is whether it still works. A quick systems check revealed the courier was in surprisingly good condition. The station's automated maintenance systems had kept it preserved, if not fully operational. Hank's skilled hands made quick work of the necessary repairs, while Ember provided unexpected assistance, using that strange energy to power systems that would otherwise have remained dormant. As they worked, Hank's mind was racing. We need a plan. Somewhere to go. Outer systems, Ember suggested. Beyond Empire reach. The frontier colonies? Hank frowned. That's rough territory. Minimal law enforcement, lots of pirates and outlaws. Perfect. Hide in chaos. Hank couldn't argue with that logic. I know some people out there from my military days. Might be able to help us lay low for a while. The sounds of their pursuers grew closer. Hank hurried the pre-flight checks, skipping non-essentials. As the courier's engines hummed to life, the maintenance bay doors shuddered. Someone was trying to force them open. Hold on, Hank said, engaging the emergency launch protocol. The sequence would blow the exterior doors without the usual safety measures. The courier shot out of the station like a bullet, debris scattering in their wake. Immediately, alarms blared as their pursuers detected them. 2 ships in pursuit, Ember reported, somehow connected to the courier's sensors. Fast. Let's see how fast, Hank muttered, pushing the courier to its limits. The ship responded beautifully, cutting through space with precision that reminded him of his fighter pilot days. But their pursuers were equally skilled and had superior vessels. They were gaining rapidly. Any more tricks up your sleeve? Hank asked Ember. The young Draconid concentrated, and once again that energy field appeared around their ship. But this time, something more happened. Space itself seemed to warp around them, and suddenly stars were streaking by at impossible speeds. What did you do? Hank gasped, checking the instruments. According to them, they were moving at 10 times the courier's maximum FTL capability. Expanded space, Ember explained, voice strained. Old Draconid skill. Cannot maintain long. True to the creature's word, the effect lasted only a few minutes before their velocity returned to normal. But it was enough. Their pursuers were nowhere to be seen on the sensors. That was incredible, Hank said, genuinely impressed. But you look exhausted again. Ember's scales had dulled, and the creature's breathing was labored. Need rest. Recovery. Hank set a course for the outer colonies, specifically a small mining outpost called Terminus where an old war buddy had settled years ago. If anyone could help them disappear, it was Ramirez. As Ember slept, Hank contemplated their situation. In less than a month, his quiet retirement had transformed into a desperate flight across the galaxy with an alien dragon that had somehow bonded with him. It was madness, and yet he felt more alive than he had in years. The arthritis in his hands was completely gone now. Looking in the courier's small washroom mirror, Hank noticed other changes too. The persistent bags under his eyes had diminished, and his posture seemed straighter. He didn't feel 63 anymore. "What have you gotten yourself into, old man?" he asked his reflection. 3 days later, they reached Terminus. The mining outpost was built into an asteroid, a haphazard collection of modules and structures that had grown organically over decades. Perfect for disappearing. Ramirez was surprised to see him, but asked few questions, a trait Hank had always appreciated about his former squadron mate. He provided them with a small apartment in the outpost's less reputable section and promised to keep his ears open for any unusual visitors. "So what's the long-term plan?" Ramirez asked as they shared a drink in the privacy of the apartment. "Honestly, I don't know," Hank admitted, watching Ember explore their new living space. He'd explained the creature as a rare pet to satisfy Ramirez's curiosity. "Lay low, I guess. Figure things out. You always were good at improvising," Ramirez said with a laugh. "Remember that time on Titan?" Hank smiled at the memory. "Hard to forget nearly freezing to death. Yet you still managed to repair that shuttle with nothing but emergency rations and a broken multi-tool." Ramirez raised his glass. "To the best damn mechanic in the fleet." As they drank, Hank felt a whisper of an idea forming. Mechanics were always in demand on the frontier. Perhaps they could build a cover as a traveling repair service, moving from outpost to outpost, staying one step ahead of their pursuers. Later that night, he discussed the idea with Ember. "Good plan," the Draconid agreed. "Move often. Build network. Resources. We'll need a better ship eventually," Hank added. "Something with proper living quarters and a workshop. Will help. Powers growing daily." Indeed, Hank had noticed Ember's abilities expanding. The creature could now manipulate energy in ways that seemed like magic, but which Ember insisted was simply Draconid biology. It made Hank a supernaturally skilled mechanic, able to intuitively understand and repair almost any technology. They spent 3 months on Terminus, with Hank establishing a reputation as a miracle worker with machines. His services were in high demand, allowing them to accumulate credits and supplies. Ember remained hidden most of the time, but their bond continued to strengthen. Hank's body continued its subtle transformation. He moved with the ease of a much younger man, and the chronic pain that had been his constant companion was a distant memory. Even his mind felt sharper, more focused. Then came the day their past caught up with them. Ramirez burst into their apartment, breathless. "Imperial agents," he gasped. "Just docked. Asking questions about unusual energy signatures." Hank was packed and ready in minutes, a contingency he'd always prepared for. Their new ship, a modified transport with hidden compartments and a fully equipped workshop, was ready for departure. "Thank you, old friend," Hank said, clasping Ramirez's hand. "I owe you." "Just stay alive," Ramirez replied. "Whatever you're mixed up in, it seems important." If only he knew, Hank thought as they slipped away from Terminus, using service tunnels to avoid the main docking areas where the Imperial agents would be watching. As they cleared the asteroid field surrounding Terminus, Ember grew agitated. "Large ship approaching," the Draconid warned. "Imperial." Sure enough, a massive vessel appeared on their sensors, similar to the one that had pursued them from the salvage station, but even larger. "They're really persistent," Hank muttered, preparing evasive maneuvers. "They fear what we become," Ember replied cryptically. "Guardian bond, not just legend. Reality they fear." Before Hank could ask for clarification, the Imperial ship launched fighters, sleek, deadly craft clearly designed for pursuit and capture. "Hold on," Hank said, engaging the transport's upgraded engines. They had speed, but not enough to outrun military-grade fighters. Ember moved to the co-pilot seat, now large enough to sit properly, wings having grown significantly over the past months. Together, the Draconids said, "Combined skills." Something new flowed through their bond, not just Ember's energy, but a melding of their consciousness. Hank found himself piloting with superhuman precision, while simultaneously Ember was channeling energy to strengthen their shields and engines. The transport danced through space, evading blasts from the pursuing fighters. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned. "Need help," Ember stated. "Others who resist Empire." "You know people?" Hank asked, surprised. "Not people. No place. Sanctuary. Ember projected coordinates directly into Hank's mind, a system he'd never heard of, far beyond the frontier. With Imperial fighters closing in, they had little choice. Let's hope your friends are home, Hank said, programming the coordinates and engaging the FTL drive. The stars blurred as they made the jump, leaving their pursuers behind, temporarily, at least. Hank knew the reprieve wouldn't last long. The Empire had resources beyond imagination and a determination that bordered on obsession. What is this sanctuary? He asked Ember as they traveled through FTL space. Place where others like me hide. And their guardians. Hank's eyebrows shot up. There are others? Other humans bonded with draconids. Not just humans. Many species can bond. Those who resist Empire gather there. This was the first Hank had heard of any organized resistance. How many? Not many. Dozens perhaps. Empire hunts relentlessly. And what do? These resistors. Survive. Plan. Wait for right moment. Right moment for what? Ember's golden eyes met his. To fight back. The revelation that they weren't alone, that others had formed similar bonds and were actively resisting the Draconid Empire, changed everything for Hank. His military mind began to see not just survival, but strategy. Tell me everything you know about this empire, he said. Strengths, weaknesses, organization, everything. As Ember shared knowledge, Hank realized they weren't just running anymore. They were heading towards something much bigger than themselves. The old mechanic who had sought solitude was about to become part of a war. 5 years passed since Hank and Ember found the sanctuary, a hidden space station built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, concealed within a nebula that played havoc with conventional sensors. What had once been a small band of resistance fighters had grown under Hank's leadership into a formidable force. Hank stood on the command deck of the Defiance, the flagship of what they now called the Free Coalition. His reflection in the view screen showed a man transformed. Though chronologically 68, he appeared no older than 50, his once gray hair now thick and dark, his posture straight, muscles defined. The Draconid bond had reversed his aging, giving him strength and vitality he hadn't possessed even in his 30s. Ember, now the size of a small horse, stood beside him. The Draconid's wings had fully developed, spanning nearly 20 feet when extended. The iridescent scales now gleamed with a deep sapphire hue, marking advanced maturity. The Imperial fleet is moving toward the Arcturus system, reported Layla Chun, Hank's tactical officer and the guardian of a Draconid named Flare. Their usual pattern, subjugating the mining colonies one by one. Hank nodded, studying the tactical display. What had begun as a desperate flight from Imperial forces had evolved into something he could never have imagined. Their small resistance had grown to include 37 Draconid Guardian pairs and hundreds of allied fighters from worlds oppressed by the Empire. They're getting bolder, Hank observed. Moving closer to Earth-controlled space. Earth still doesn't believe the Empire exists, said Commander Ramirez, who had joined their cause 3 years ago after Imperial forces destroyed Terminus. They think the attacks are isolated pirate incidents. The Empire prefers it that way. Ember's voice resonated in the minds of everyone on the bridge, a skill the Draconid had developed as it matured. Divide and conquer has always been their strategy. Hank had learned much about the Draconid Empire in these years. They were an ancient species, powerful and technologically advanced, who had spread across multiple galaxies. But their society was rigidly hierarchical, with a small ruling class controlling the rest through fear and subjugation. They dragons that bonded with guardians were a rare genetic variant, hunted by the Empire for their unique abilities. We can't let Arcturus fall, Hank decided. Not only are the colonies there strategic, but it would put the Empire one step closer to Earth. We're outnumbered 3-1, Layla pointed out. Even with our Draconid advantages. Hank smiled, the confident grin of a man who had spent 5 years outmaneuvering superior forces. When has that stopped us before? The plan came together quickly. Years of working together had made the command team efficient. They would use the nebula's unusual properties to approach undetected, then strike the Imperial fleet from multiple vectors simultaneously, focusing on their command ships. As the Free Coalition fleet prepared for battle, Hank retreated to his quarters for a rare moment of reflection. On his desk sat the only personal item he'd brought from his old life, a faded photograph of himself in an Earth Defense Fleet uniform. taken 4 decades earlier. You were thinking of Earth, Ember said, entering the room. The Draconid could now sense Hank's emotions across vast distances, their bond having deepened beyond what either had thought possible. I was thinking about how things change, Hank replied. 5 years ago, I was a lonely old man fixing broken ships, counting down my remaining years. Regrets? Ember asked, settling beside him. Hank shook his head. Not one. He ran his hand along Ember's scales, a gesture that had become natural. But I worry about Earth. They're not ready for what's coming. Few are, before they face the Empire. We need to warn them. After Arcturus, we should send a delegation. They may not believe you. Maybe not. But I have to try. The alert sounded. Time to depart. The Free Coalition fleet moved through the nebula, a strange armada of modified civilian vessels, captured Imperial ships, and vessels of unique design that incorporated Draconid technology. At their center was the Defiance, once an Imperial cruiser, now transformed by Hank's mechanical genius and Ember's abilities into something entirely new. Hank took his place on the command deck, Ember beside him. Through their bond, they connected to the ship itself, integrating with its systems in a way no ordinary crew could achieve. Around them, other Guardian Draconid pairs did the same with their vessels, creating a fleet that moved with unprecedented coordination. They emerged from the nebula to find the Imperial forces bombarding the main mining colony of Arcturus. Massive black ships rained destruction upon the defenseless settlement. All ships, engage as planned, Hank ordered, his voice calm despite the odds they faced. Remember, focus fire on their command vessels. The battle erupted with stunning violence. Imperial ships, caught by surprise, scrambled to reposition. The Free Coalition struck from multiple angles, their smaller vessels darting between the massive Imperial warships, targeting vulnerable points that only Draconid senses could identify. Hank and Ember guided the Defiance through the chaos with seemingly impossible precision. Through their bond, Hank could perceive space in ways human senses never could, anticipating enemy movements seconds before they occurred. Imperial reinforcements incoming, Layla reported, her voice tense. Right on schedule, Hank replied. This was the critical moment. They had deliberately leaked information about a smaller force to draw the Imperial fleet into a trap. Signal the Sundered Wing, he ordered. From the far side of Arcturus's moon appeared a second coalition force, led by the Sundered Wing, captained by a former Imperial officer who had defected with his guardian. They struck the newly arrived Imperial ships before they could organize their defenses. The space around Arcturus became a storm of energy weapons and explosions. The coalition forces, though outnumbered, used their superior coordination and the unique abilities of their Draconid partners to devastating effect. On the Defiance's command deck, Hank felt the strain of the battle through his bond with Ember. The Draconid was channeling enormous energy, enhancing the ship's systems beyond their design capacity. Imperial flagship targeted, Ramirez announced. We have a clear shot. Take it, Hank ordered. The Defiance's main weapon, a modified energy cannon infused with Draconid power, fired a concentrated beam that cut through the Imperial flagship's shields as if they weren't there. The massive vessel shuddered, secondary explosions cascading along its hull. Direct hit to their command center, Layla confirmed. The effect on the Imperial forces was immediate. With their command structure disrupted, their coordination faltered. The coalition pressed the advantage, targeting ship after ship with surgical precision. 2 hours later, it was over. The Imperial fleet retreated, leaving behind disabled vessels and debris. The coalition had suffered losses, but far fewer than anticipated. The mining colony was saved, its grateful population already reaching out with thanks and offers of support. We did it, Ramirez said, disbelief in his voice. We actually drove them back. For now, Hank cautioned. They'll return with greater numbers. But we'll be stronger too, Ember added. Word of this victory will spread. Others will join us. Hank nodded, already thinking of the next step. Secure the system. Establish defenses. Then prepare a delegation to Earth. It's time they learned what's coming. 3 weeks later, Hank stood before the Earth Defense Council, the ruling body for humanity's military forces. His request for an audience had been granted only because of his former service record, and even then, with obvious reluctance. Let me be clear, Mr. Carter, said Admiral Chun, the head of the council. You're claiming that an interstellar empire of dragon-like aliens is systematically conquering human colonies, and that you command a resistance force against them? The skepticism in her voice was unmistakable. Hank had come alone, leaving Ember aboard their cloaked shuttle in orbit. Revealing a Draconid too soon would create panic rather than alliance. I understand your disbelief, Admiral, Hank replied calmly. 5 years ago, I would have had the same reaction. But the evidence is irrefutable. He presented data collected over years, patterns of colony disappearances, sensor readings of Imperial ships, testimonies from survivors. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from dismissal to concern. Even if what you say is true, said General Rodriguez, what do you expect Earth to do? You speak of an empire spanning galaxies. I expect Earth to prepare, Hank answered. The Free Coalition has been fighting the Empire successfully for years with limited resources. With Earth's fleet supporting us, we could establish a defensive perimeter that would make them reconsider this expansion. And these abilities you claim to have? Admiral Chen asked. A result of bonding with one of these creatures? Hank hesitated, then decided a demonstration was necessary. He focused, drawing on his connection with Ember despite the distance. Energy crackled around his hands, and the room's electronic systems flickered. The council members recoiled in shock. This is but a fraction of what's possible, Hank said. The Draconids aren't our enemies. Their empire is. Those who have escaped seek alliance, not conquest. The meeting lasted hours, with questions becoming increasingly practical rather than skeptical. By the end, Hank had secured a tentative agreement. Earth would send representatives to verify his claims, and if satisfied, would consider formal alliance with the Free Coalition. As Hank returned to his shuttle, he felt both hope and trepidation. Bringing Earth into the conflict would change everything, potentially turning a resistance movement into a war between civilizations. Ember was waiting, golden eyes studying Hank's expression. They believed. Enough to investigate further, Hank replied, settling into the pilot's seat. It's a start. The Empire will not wait, Ember warned. Once they learn of your approach to Earth, they will accelerate their plans. I'm counting on it, Hank said with a grim smile. Let them reveal themselves fully. No more hiding in the shadows. Over the next 6 months, the situation evolved rapidly. Earth's investigation confirmed Hank's warnings, leading to a formal alliance with the Free Coalition. Human military vessels, with their advanced technology but lack of experience against Imperial tactics, integrated with Coalition forces. Hank found himself not just a resistance leader but a diplomat, bridging the gap between human military tradition and the unique warfare of Draconid-enhanced vessels. His decades in the Earth Defense Fleet gave him credibility with human captains, while his years leading the Coalition earned him respect from the diverse species that had joined their cause. The Empire, as predicted, responded with escalation. Attacks increased across multiple sectors, no longer bothering with the pretense of pirate raids. Earth's colonies came under direct assault, forcing the defense fleet into action. The war that Hank had hoped to prevent was now unavoidable. But the preparation time he had secured proved invaluable. When the Imperial Armada launched its major offensive against the Sol system, the combined Earth Coalition fleet was ready. The battle for humanity's home system was the largest in recorded history. Over 2,000 vessels engaged in combat throughout the space from Neptune to Mars. At the center of the human defense was the Defiance, now the command ship for the entire combined fleet. Hank stood on its bridge, Ember at his side, coordinating the defense with a calm born of experience. Through their bond, enhanced by 5 years of growth, they connected not just to their ship, but to the entire fleet, creating a network of awareness that the Empire could not match. Imperial forces breaking through Sector 7, reported a young Earth officer. Redirect the Sundered Wing battle group, Hank ordered. Have them target the command vessels as practiced. The battle raged for days, with neither side gaining decisive advantage. The Empire had numbers and raw firepower. The Coalition had coordination and precision that seemed supernatural to observers. The turning point came when Imperial forces targeted Earth directly, bypassing the defensive lines with a suicide run of capital ships. As the massive vessels accelerated toward the planet, Hank made the decision that would define the war. All Draconid vessels, converge on my position, he ordered. Guardian pairs, Prepare for deep synchronization. It was a maneuver they had theorized but never attempted, a massive linking of Draconid Guardian bonds to create a single, unified field of power. The risk was enormous. Such deep connection could burn out both human and Draconid minds. "Are you certain?" Ember asked privately. "No choice," Hank replied. "If Earth falls, everything falls." As the Imperial ships approached Earth, 37 Guardian Draconid pairs entered deep synchronization. Through Hank and Ember, their combined power flowed, creating a shield of energy unlike anything seen before. It materialized between Earth and the incoming Imperial vessels, a shimmering barrier that spanned thousands of kilometers. The Imperial ships crashed against it like waves against a cliff, their momentum and weapons unable to penetrate the unified Draconid power. The shield held until Earth's defensive batteries could target and destroy the attackers. The display of power shocked both sides. Imperial forces, witnessing the destruction of their supposedly unstoppable capital ships, began a disorganized retreat. The combined Earth Coalition fleet pressed the advantage, driving them back beyond the Sol system's boundaries. In the aftermath, as the Coalition secured Earth's safety, Hank collapsed on the Defiance's bridge, the strain of coordinating such massive power nearly fatal. He woke days later in the medical bay, Ember constantly at his side. "We won," he asked weakly. "We survived," Ember corrected. "The Empire has withdrawn from this region, but they will return." "But not soon," came Admiral Chen's voice as she entered the room. "Their losses were catastrophic. Our analysts believe we've bought years, not months." Hank struggled to sit up, his body once again feeling his true age. The deep synchronization had taken a toll that even his Draconid bond couldn't immediately heal. "Years is good," he said. "We'll need them." In the months that followed, Hank's legend grew. The media called him the Dragon Commander, a title he found amusing but accepted for its symbolic value. His fleet, now officially recognized as the largest combined force in the galaxy, established a defensive perimeter around Earth-controlled space. More Draconids escaped Imperial control, seeking sanctuary and guardians. The bond that had once been rare became a symbol of the alliance between species. Training facilities were established to prepare potential guardians, though the bond itself remained mysterious, occurring only when the connection was right. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Hank stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Coalition headquarters, a massive space station at the edge of the Sol system. Beside him was not just Ember, but a dozen young Draconids, recently escaped from Imperial breeding facilities. "They look to you now," Ember said, watching as the young ones practiced their abilities under the guidance of experienced guardians. "Not just humans, but all who resist the Empire." Hank nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Not what I expected when I found you in that smuggler's compartment." "Fate," Ember suggested, wings shifting in what Hank had come to recognize as amusement. "Maybe," Hank conceded. "Or just an old mechanic who couldn't leave a wounded creature to die." A communication alert sounded. Admiral Chen's voice came through. "Coalition intelligence has detected Imperial movements beyond the Orion Arm. They're rebuilding faster than anticipated." "Acknowledged," Hank replied. "Convene the War Council." As he moved to leave, one of the young Draconids approached, eyes curious. "Is it true," the creature asked telepathically, "that you were once just a mechanic?" Hank smiled, placing a hand on the young one's head. "I still am," he said, "just working with bigger machines now." The fleet commander who had started as an old mechanic returned to the bridge of his flagship, ready to face whatever came next. The galaxy had changed, and he had changed with it. But some things remained constant. His hands still knew how to fix what was broken, whether it was a ship's engine or an alliance between worlds. And that, Hank reflected as Ember fell into step beside him, was enough. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.